The biggest fear that our government has, Naomi, is being cut out of the process. The beauty of where we're headed with cryptocurrencies, with blockchain technology, is it eliminates the middleman. This is the federal government telling us that we have to give all of our personal information because that's the only way our government can protect us. I don't need my government looking over my shoulder on everything that I do.
Congressman Emmer, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Naomi. Great to be with you.
I reached out to you because I was really impressed by the statement that you made about central bank digital currencies. I wanted to dive into that and all the comments you made about cash, the comments you made about financial privacy. It's a side of the conversation around central bank digital currencies that we're sort of lacking at the moment as we determine how America's going to move forward with this. So to start off with, give me your overview of your take on central bank digital currencies and why you think there might be some danger there.
Why I think there might be some danger. There's a lot of danger. And from my standpoint, Naomi, everybody was talking about a central bank digital currency as if we're falling behind China. You know, we got to have this central bank or Fed generated CBDC. And boy, if we don't do it, we're going to fall behind China. That's the wrong debate. I mean, we should never be trying to emulate the Communist Party of China. They, in my opinion, are practicing digital authoritarianism. They use it as a surveillance tool. They use it to control their citizens. That shouldn't be the case in this country. The Federal Reserve in this country cannot and should not ever mobilize itself into a retail bank account that's able to collect personal identity information on all users and track their transactions indefinitely. We are not opposed to any CBDC, but if there was one, it has to have the qualities of cash. It has to be open, permissionless, and private. And we just have to make sure that whatever the United States does in this area, that the digital currency policy protects financial privacy, maintains the dollar's dominance, and cultivates innovation. And then you got to protect against cyber threats. And I've talked about the dollar and privacy, but decentralization is the whole point of blockchain, right?
I want to dive into your comments there because it's very rare that I hear a congressman talking about the benefits of cash. Generally, when I hear politicians talking about cash, I mean, there are reporting requirements and we want to increase the surveillance of it. And we're saying, oh, cash is this bad thing. You're rephrasing that. You're saying, actually, this is this private center that we need to be upholding. We need to maintain cash-like attributes when we have this CBDC. Why is financial privacy important, in your opinion?
It's the whole definition of freedom, Naomi. Look, you can become a prisoner of your own safety and security. And I think in this country, that's the risk that is facing us, right? When you talk about know your customer information, this is the federal government telling us that we have to give all of our personal information because that's the only way we can protect ourselves. And more importantly, that's the only way our government can protect us from those that might want to cause us harm or injury. That's the wrong answer. And the reason that we filed the bill back, I think it was Wednesday, January 12th, was just the way you started this discussion. I didn't think there was enough of a debate about the issue, about the potential problems with a central bank digital currency that's developed by our government and utilized by our government, much the way China is doing it. And again, it's because I believe the very definition of our freedom is our financial system, right? It's my ability to work directly with you, Naomi, in a bargain for exchange. And I don't need my government looking over my shoulder on everything that I do. So maybe I am talking differently, but this is what I've always said, is you can become a prisoner of your own safety and security. In this case, there's a better way. Whatever we do, the Federal Reserve should not become a retail bank. And from my standpoint, the other way you can do it is they use the existing financial rails with the existing banking system, but that's just a debit card. So the biggest fear that our government has, Naomi, is being cut out of the process. These have always been intermediated exchanges, and the beauty of where we're headed with cryptocurrencies, with blockchain technology, is it eliminates the middleman. It eliminates the need for an intermediary. That's what they're struggling with, is they want to continue to be that intermediary. And quite frankly, the way they've mismanaged monetary policy, there's a reason why this area is growing so fast.
Yeah, I completely agree. Finally, we have an option. Finally, we have choice in monetary policy. And it's interesting to see where all the money is flocking to. I want to dig into the difference between the Federal Reserve having becoming a retail bank and it being what it is now. We already have surveillance in our banking system, but there seems to be a difference between the Federal Reserve collecting all of that information directly and that information being collected by banks. Walk me through that difference there so people can understand why this is such a big issue.
Look, they're already collecting information on us, Naomi. In fact, the Treasury Secretary lobbied Senator Portman's office to get an amendment into the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill last August that allows taxing of minors, changed the term of broker, which created all kinds of problems. But on the heels of that, or at the same time, they wanted every retail bank to share with the Treasury information on banking transactions that you and I and every other American has that total a cumulative $600. Okay. In other words, they want to monitor our bank accounts and, more importantly, our specific financial transactions. Why? Well, you'd have to ask them. I think it's to, again, control what Americans are doing, see what Americans are doing. It's information that's personal and should not be shared. This obviously would be the ultimate for our federal government if they could have a central bank digital currency, that they literally are the retail bank issuing accounts directly to Americans. You realize, Naomi, that would mean that Americans' financial data would be centralized and housed by the government. I mean, I told you that they want to reach into your private bank accounts and see what you're doing. And by the way, they already are. That bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, now requires this information when you're doing Venmo transactions and a couple of others. That has to be reported to the federal government. I don't think a lot of Americans know that. This would be the ultimate, Naomi. They would have all the information. They could monitor it. And by the way, in China, where they can do this, they can turn off your card. They can tell you where you can spend, when you can spend, how you can spend. Imagine the power that would give the central government and how it would eliminate your personal freedoms and mine. And we just can't have that.
And there's this interesting loophole that I think they're using for this surveillance, this third-party doctrine where they're saying, oh, well, you've given that information to Venmo, you've given it to PayPal and your bank account, therefore it's not really yours anymore. We have the right to demand that these third-party institutions collect it. And it's interesting because the government has cash reporting requirements as well. And they've just added crypto reporting requirements in this bill. And Jerry Brito of the Coin Center is filing a lawsuit against the government to say this is actually unconstitutional because there is no third-party doctrine that could explain away why you're asking people to report individual transactions peer-to-peer where there is no third party collecting that data, where there is no intermediary for a crypto transaction, it's peer-to-peer. So what are your thoughts on the constitutionality of cash reporting requirements and crypto reporting requirements?
Well, I hope Jerry is successful. I'm not going to be the judge and the jury. Obviously, I don't like what they're doing. I do think that the reporting requirements, they're so confusing. They want to, in one case, treat crypto as an asset. In another case, they want to treat it as cash. They just aren't clear as to what they're trying to do or why. And quite frankly, Naomi, it's because they don't understand what they're working with, or they do understand it a little bit and they're trying to control it. This third-party sharing, third-party doctrine, I look at it this way: it's your private information, Naomi. If you do business with a third party, they are giving you something of value, which is why you shared your private information with them. It is already a bargain for exchange between you and whomever that is on the other end. I mean, for instance, your bank, your personal bank, in order to streamline transactions, in order to make it more efficient for you, you have given them permission to use some of this information. That doesn't mean that you've released it to the entire world, or more importantly, to your government. And that should never happen. So obviously, this has been an issue that I've had dating back to, more than 10 years ago when I was in our state's legislature. The information should belong to you and me. And it's one of the reasons that when you talk about what we're going to evolve from, which is Web 2 to Web 3, where Naomi and Tom will have our own personal digital identities and we'll be able to transact business directly with each other without having to worry about an intermediary. That's why it's so exciting. And that's really where we're headed ultimately, I believe, and it'll solve a lot of these problems.
Do you think that the government's going to allow us to evolve there? Because there's a lot of regulation. There are increasing crackdowns on stable coins, on any sort of like quasi-decentralized finance. Anywhere that there's a neck to strangle, it seems that they're aiming for it right now. And I wonder, what's the future look like in your opinion for cryptocurrency? Is it stark? Is it optimistic? Where do privacy coins fit into all of this? I'm interested in how much the government is going to allow.
Well, why don't we talk very crudely about the history? It actually predates 2008. This, to me, has been a fight about monetary policy all along. There are those who think the Federal Reserve has done a very poor job of the monetary policy that has been applied for years. I mean, when we went off the gold standard back in 1972, we essentially, my opinion, went from an economy that creates wealth to one that trades in debt. And in order to survive in that type of a marketplace, you just got to get bigger and bigger so that you can actually trade in your own and others' debt, as opposed to creating wealth. Well, guess what? The 2008 crash comes along, and you've got the Satoshi white paper. I'm sure that the traditional financial industry looked at this beginning and said, well, this is like a cartoon does. This is not real. This is illusionary, because they don't understand where the web is going. Well, that's the way they started. They didn't think it was going to last. It started to grow. It started to take root. So then what was the next step? I would argue the next step was they put every obstacle they could in the way. And it didn't stop the industry from growing. Certainly, I believe it's driven opportunity out of the United States of America, but not all of it. So guess what they did next? And again, you can span this over whatever time period you want to bring it up to today. But the next thing they did is they said, well, we're not going to get rid of it, so we need to try and control it. Well, they really can't control it, so I believe they're trying to absorb it now into the existing system, and it's just not going to work. So I think the future is very bright. I think the reason you have this fastest growing part of our economy, one of the fastest areas, growth areas we've seen in decades, is because of the poor monetary policy that we've been experiencing. And you're seeing the result now with inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years. And what's the answer? The answer apparently is now to tighten the money supply by raising the interest rates. I think you're going to get a lot of arguments from people who understand finance that this is just the opposite of what should be done. And because of that, I think crypto is just going to continue to grow in spite of what people in the government might want to do to slow that down or to try and control it within this country. I think the future is bright, because you know what? I think people are much smarter than our government gives them credit for.
It's interesting. I interviewed Jay Clayton years ago when he was the chair of the SEC, and I asked him, is he worried about decentralized exchanges? This was in the early days of DEXs. It was more of an idea than actually something that had come to fruition. And he just said flatly, no. And now we have Gary Gensler, who seems to be so scared that he makes constant statements about it, saying, DEXs are not outside of our jurisdiction. Don't think that they won't be regulated. Like, it seems like there's this real fervor to kind of, play this game of whack-a-mole. They're trying to shut down these projects that just keep popping up all over the place. But because there are no barriers to entry to someone getting involved with code, it's going to be a very difficult process. How successful do you think that they are going to be? Are we going to create this split in the world where we have kind of this reg-fi and this DeFi movement?
Well, let's go back, because you get specific with the reg-fi and DeFi movement. When you talk about how successful are they going to be, Naomi? I think that the goal that we've had inside of Congress, and I've been working on this for the last 7 years, we've got some real champions, certainly on the Republican side, but we've got some that are starting to grow on the Democrats' side of the aisle as well. And anybody who listens to this or watches it, I should say, listens to the work that you're doing should understand this is a nonpartisan issue. This is not a Republican Democrat, us and them thing. This is mostly an education issue. You've got a lot of members who look like me, grew up in a two-dimensional world, right? Yeah, we had the internet, but it was email and word processing, that kind of stuff, which is not what we're dealing with today. And these are really bright people that are using blockchain technology to advance all kinds of things, crypto and beyond. And I think we saw something that I really was excited about. That was a hearing back last month in the Financial Services Committee in the House, where Republicans and Democrats started asking the right questions. And there was just a feeling, at least for me, that we made some real gains in terms of this nonpartisan nature of the issue, especially when Democrats start to openly question Gary Gensler and his actions at the SEC. So how successful are they going to be? Well, if Congress starts to do its job, and I think we're going to go to another level this year with the education piece, but as we go into a new Congress, the 118th, that'll take office in January of 2023, I think you're going to have Republicans and Democrats alike who are ready to do what's necessary to create a light touch framework, regulatory framework, if you will, that will allow this part of our economy to really take off. And I think you're going to see more and more people in the bureaucracies of the executive branch come along and realize that, yes, this is a disruptive force in finance. This is a disruptive force when you talk about a constitutional republic that believes in freedom. We're going to maintain our existing financial structure and give them the opportunity, if we do this right, to evolve. But we're not going to try to frustrate the growth of the, whether it's utilizing stable coins or go through the whole gamut of all these different ideas. We want them here in this country because it'll drive our economy as well or better than anything has in the past. And I just think all that should happen here. So I'm bullish. Sorry for the long diatribe, Naomi, but I'm very bullish on us getting our act together and making sure. I mean, you brought up Jay Clayton. He's a great example. Jay Clayton was, the right guy at the right time at the SEC, but this was an issue that, he was struggling with every day. I know that his agency was struggling with it every day. Guess what? Jay Clayton's actually working in this industry today now that he's left the SEC. That tells me that he has seen where this is headed. So I'm bullish. At the end, my short answer is I have high hopes for where this is going in the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years.
I hope you're right, because I agree that so far we've seen a lot of innovation driven offshore. It's driven out of America, and it's such a shame to see Americans missing out on opportunities that other countries are allowed to participate in. But you've done tremendous work, not just with this recent bill that you've put forward. You've also asked for clarity from the IRS about, how you actually pay your taxes, because everything is kind of in this weird gray area. There's nothing clear, and you already mentioned different departments in the government consider crypto to be a different kind of asset depending on how it benefits them. You've also you're co-chair of the Congressional Blockchain Caucus. What is the main focus of the Blockchain Caucus right now? What's the most important issue you guys are fighting?
Well, I mean, it was expanding the caucus to begin with. It was founded several years ago by 3 or 4 members, and it really never grew substantially until I would argue this Congress. I think this Congress, we're now up to about 40 members, and I can tell you, Naomi, out of the 435 that are in the U.S. House of Representatives, we've got a whole bunch of others who are getting involved in this space and the policy issues that aren't members yet. And I'm hopeful that they're gonna join as well, because you got to raise the awareness. They got to people, especially policymakers, fear the things that they don't understand, right? So help them understand why this is so important to give people access to the financial system that they haven't had in the past. Like you're talking about, the opportunities. Once these people find out that because of our lack of clarity, right? What is cash? What is a commodity? What is a security? And you know what? You can employ lawyers forever by having the so-called Howey test, because that is a full employment formula for lawyers. Or you can give some basic guidelines so we know what the jurisdiction is, so we stop this regulation through enforcement action, we stop regulation through public statements, and we stop, the example I have is the $1.4 billion project for a gentleman that I met with in Atlanta about a year ago, that he started in the Cayman Islands because he didn't know what to expect in this country. We'll stop having American developers to build a certain blockchain. I'm not going to name names, but they couldn't pay with their token because the securities laws in this country are not clear. I refer to the Howey's test, right? So guess what? They hired German developers instead who could accept their token as compensation. I mean, this is what the Blockchain Caucus is all about. Let's grow it. Let's keep educating people. And I'll go back to one other thing. Last August, I told you the story about the Portman Amendment in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Naomi, that was a watershed moment, I believe, in Congress, as we'll find out going forward, because we probably had years of education done with the Senate side of the building and others that was done in a matter of weeks. And it's really helped us move this issue to the forefront. That and the fact that you're dealing with a $3 trillion market cap, this is not going away. 55 million Americans are now holding some form of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that's a large number. The final question that I have for you, you've made some comments in the past about the potential of a spot ETF. The SEC notoriously has just not approved one. They've approved a futures ETF, but they, for some reason, don't want a spot one. And you said that investors should have a choice over which product is most suitable for them. So what are your thoughts around this, and do you think it's coming anytime in the future?
Well, I worry that the SEC chair, his pride is now getting in the way. He's an academic more than anything else. I mean, I love it when my colleagues tell me, well, he's a professor. He used to teach this stuff. Well, he might have taught it, but I don't know what he was teaching, because if you look at what they approved when you talk about this, they allow the Bitcoin futures ETFs. They allowed those to start trading in October on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, right? Those CFTC regulated Bitcoin futures contracts, Naomi, you know this, which is why you asked me the question. They get 100% of their pricing from 5 US regulated crypto exchanges. So it doesn't make sense that Bitcoin futures ETFs can trade, but not Bitcoin spot ETFs. because the price discovery of both is based on the spot market. It makes no sense. And that's why, first off, it's intellectually inconsistent. And people are smart. People look at this and ask, what are you doing, Chair Gensler, and why? There has to be some other thing that's driving you other than what makes sense for investors. His job, the job of the SEC, is to promote Americans, protect Americans, and their right to invest in different products. And in this case, I think he's working against the American investor instead of working for us. And we've tried to make that argument. I'm hoping that his pride doesn't get in the way, and I'm hoping that he and the SEC change course in this regard and allow Bitcoin spot ETFs. We're going to keep working it, Naomi.
Keep working. Well, I'm hoping. I'm real hopeful. I'm right there with you. I'm hopeful that crypto keeps thriving. I'm hopeful that we get more clarity for those who are completely confused at the moment by all of the contradictory language being thrown around. But regardless, I think that crypto is going to thrive. I agree with you. I think that this is absolutely the future. We can either embrace it or we could try and push against it, but it's only going to push it offshore. But I really appreciate your time with me today, and thank you so much for all of your work.
Well, remember, there's that commercial out there that history favors the bold, right? And that's what they're talking about. You're right. You can either get involved, embrace it, understand what it's about. Doesn't mean you have to be one of the 55 million and growing, but certainly don't just discount something because you don't understand it, right?
Absolutely. Let's keep telling other Congress people about that. It's a good words of advice there. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Naomi. Appreciate what you do.